let people in. Carrie's coming in. Jorge. Awesome, guys. All right. So what I'm going to go over is basically stages of wealth building. This is, I say wealth building, but the way you want to look at this applies to business and personal finances too, because it's really similar principles, especially when you're running your own business, whether it's credit card processing, ATM businesses, your remote notary, sales, anything. Even if you're running a business within a business, meaning that you're a contractor, all this still applies. And this is coming from experience of running two multi-million-dollar businesses. And I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a presentation because what I'm finding is this is what I think you guys would find the most useful right now. And after feedback I've gotten, I've spoken to probably like 30 people this week about business, them scaling their own businesses. And we're talking about like roofing businesses, a staffing business for cleaning. The same principles kept applying that I was talking to them about. I was like, you know what? Let's just present this for the inner circle, right? So I know a few guys know me here. You're going to see some few new faces in here also, but just give you a quick background and why this matters to you. Okay, so basically, I'm very big on saying like I'm not special, and I say this to some people, and sometimes it comes across the wrong way, and I tell them like, hey, you're not special. You are not special. And it sounds weird saying that, right? Because you're like, who are you talking to like that? But when you really think about it, as long as you internalize the fact that you're not that special, you lose your ego and you're able to perform better. And when you realize that, you realize, you know what? I'm so insignificant in the world that no one cares if I succeed or fail. So what's the worst part of trying? And I bring this up from my experience of, I joined the military 3 days after I turned 18, right? Supposed to go to college, supposed to use or like live that traditional, American dream, which is you go to college, get married, buy two cars, have a loan for those cars for 8 years, make sure you get a mortgage for 30 years, make sure you pay off your student loans for another 15 years, and then you retire and die at like 65. That's the American dream. It's very sad to say that, right? Coming from the military, some of you guys were also in the military also. Very proud. My parents were immigrants. But when you realize that, you're like, something disconnects. And there has to be something different between the people that are born into wealthy families, whether they have businesses, investments, they pass down generational wealth, and those who build it from scratch, right? So I got out of the Marine Corps and didn't really have any direction. You think that, hey, honor, courage, commitment, you stay focused, and then all of a sudden you're going to get out and things are going to go well. It didn't work out. That's not the real story, guys. That's volume two. That's volume two. So ended up in a bad spot. It was over 60 something $1,000 in credit card debt. If I remember correctly, it was like 67,000. And revolving debt, you're talking about like 27%. Like it just piles and piles and piles. And you get to a point where you're just like, man, something's got to give. This can't be life. This absolutely can't be life, where it feels like you have like 46 pounds or kilos if you're international on your shoulders. And you're like, can I just roll my shoulders back? Like, come on, give me a break. And so I was in that spot for months and months and months. I was overweight. I was stressed the hell out. I had no idea what I was going to do. You ever been to a point where you log into your bank account like 8 times a day and you're like, why am I logging in? Nothing's changing. It just looks bad. You got to keep it real. You log in and you're like, you're doing the authentication. And back then they didn't have the text message verification. They're just like, log in. We don't care. But you log in and you're like, that zero's not changing. And it's like a Saturday evening. Like, what's going to change? And then you log in on Sunday again and I'm like, still zero. Actually, negative. I didn't know they can add a zero, negative something here. So it was a pretty bad spot. I'll put it that way. And you're looking at your checking account balance. And I'm looking at it and there's only like 3 digits in there. I'm just like, and you guys know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been in a spot, right, in a bad spot, everyone's been there, especially if you've been in the military. You usually spend the weekends spending your money on alcohol, right? So you look at it and you're like, all right, I have negative this, which is like 5 figures. That's like the biggest 5 figures I've ever seen because there's a negative behind it. And then your checking account is like 3 digits. And you're like, do I pay the bill off or do I just say whatever? And that's when the bank starts hitting you with the overdraft protection advertisements, where they start killing you, paying $25 for overdraft protection. So the point being is that I was in a down spot, right? Down spot. And I took a step back and I had to actually, reset, rip the Band-Aid off, as we call it, right? So if you're in the medical field, you probably appreciate this, but you know, when you get a shot sometimes and the kids try to like slowly take it off and there's that one hair being pulled, like just rip it off, just get it over with. So it was the exact same thing with this. Ultimately, what I did was like, all right, I got to do a hard reset. Like, there's nothing else. What's the worst that's going to happen? I literally have no money. Like, what is the worst that can happen? So I ended up contacting my landlord. I was like, hey, man, and I was still paying my rent on time. There was a trick you could do with like certain credit cards back then. And there was a trick you could pay off like another bank and then that turns into money and all that stuff, right? So I was barely able to afford my rent with my credit cards. And rent back then was like $1,500 a month, which right now it's a steal. But back then you're making like, I think I was making like $7 an hour, right? So you can only imagine 80 hours a week or 80 hours a month, every 80 hours every two pay periods. So I would take home like $1,000 something or something. It's crazy. So I contacted my landlord and I always made it a point to pay on time, et cetera. I don't know how my credit score didn't drop. I guess because I was just making the minimum payments and they're like, you're great. We'll keep you in debt forever. And it was like an embarrassing conversation. It was extremely embarrassing. I was like, hey, man, you know, I know things seem okay. You took a bet on me, letting me rent this place out. I was in a pretty bad relationship at the time. So, you know, she was living with me also. And I was like, hey, you know, I just can't make rent anymore. I gotta move out. And it was like this extreme, it's almost like somebody poured a bucket on you of just like shame. The worst feeling I'd felt in my life at the time. And keep in mind, I'd come from Marine Corps boot camp, and you guys seen the YouTube videos where they're yelling at you, they're calling you a maggot, they're like, "You don't deserve to live. How are you standing on my boot camp?" That was nothing. That was absolutely nothing. This was like absolute shame. So what he said to me really surprised me, and he said, "Hey man, no worries. I know you'll be successful." And that stuck with me like to this day. Years later, this was like almost like 17 years ago, which is crazy to say that. So it stuck with me. He's like, hey, you'll be successful. So that really hit it off with me. And so made the decision. I was like, all right, I got to get rid of everything. Sold all my belongings. You know how that goes. Back then, it was Amazon. If you guys are not Amazon, it was eBay where you could do like the bidding. I don't know if they still do that. But like you would put your stuff online. PayPal was the only way you can get paid back then. And you would list something for like $7. People would wait till the last 2 minutes to bid it up to like $57. And I'm just praying. I'm paying attention to these bidding wars. And I'm like, please, please bid some more, right? And then you get your friends. And I know this is against terms of service. So if they catch me, it is what it is. You'd get a friend to bid just to bump it up a little bit. Hopefully somebody does like $50.01, right? And you're taking so much risk because your friend's like, yo, if they don't win, you better pay me back. So I'm taking risks just to try to make ends meet. So I sold everything. I ended up moving into my new place. Really nice spot. It was a 1999 Nissan Altima. All right, leather seats, really good furniture, fully furnished. No tinted windows. It was bad, guys. It was bad. And luckily, I was in the Bay Area. So Bay Area, California, guys. If you know, the weather is like decent all year long. The coldest it gets is like 50 something degrees. So it doesn't snow or anything, but it gets chilly. So moved into my new fully furnished car, and I was like, man, I swear things can't get worse than this. Things cannot get worse than what they are right now. And every single day, I would get up. I kept a 24-hour fitness membership because I got some like promo when I was in the military where they're like, hey, lifetime membership. All you have to pay is $50 a year as long as you pay on time. So something ridiculously low. I'd go to 24-hour fitness every single morning, go take a shower, go to work. I was working at a grocery store, so I'd have like bok choy and lettuce. And if you guys need any tips on like making some pico de gallo or something, that was a spot. I was in the Bay Area. My whole staff only spoke Spanish, so I make the most best pico de gallo, right? So all jokes aside, basically I was just like working and working and working, and I would just be numb. You guys ever been in that spot where you're just kind of like, it's like the weather outside right now. You know, it's just gray, and you're like, man, I don't know where I'm going from here. So I remember speaking to my manager, and he's like, dude, you're doing great. You're going to promote, et cetera. And I was like, I just can't see myself staying here. Right. And then I got hired at Whole Foods of all places. So I was actually working at Whole Foods. I was working like the produce, and they're like, bro, you're going to do well. You're going to promote, et cetera. And I'm just like, I'm out of shape. I'm depressed. I'm frustrated. That's the combination of everything. I'm like, I guess this is my life. I'm going to promote. I'm going to like be in charge of some cashiers. And then there's not like there's anything wrong with that. But I'm just like, man, how did I go from like infantry and working with like snipers and like badass like special operations unit in the Marines to this? I'm like, this can't be it. So I was actually going to re-enlist. I was at that point where I'm like, fuck it, man. I'm just going to spend 20 years in the military. And if you guys know anything about the military, there's a high like PTSD, suicide rate, uh, deployments. Like, I mean, the likelihood of you getting injured, like seriously maimed, injured, et cetera, is very high, especially during that tempo. That's when Obama was in office. So we're full on in Afghanistan, Iraq. And our unit were in, it was just, yeah, it was kind of crazy, right? And then that's when we just started deploying to Africa. So I'm already thinking in my head, I'm like, man, I guess this is gonna be my life. I'm just gonna be one of those guys that goes to war every other year and just figure it out, right? So long story short, I'm working one day in Whole Foods and I see the sheriff's deputy. And just to be clear, it's the cop guys, just different terms in California. Runs to the sheriff's deputies, and this dude is yoked. Like, this dude is yoked. If you think like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I was like, I don't know how this guy fits in his uniform. And I was just in shock. I'm looking at him and it was like a man crush. I'm like, oh my goodness, clean cut hair, everything. I'm looking at him like, dude, this guy's a specimen. Walking with the shoulders back. And it reminded me of a lot of like Marine Corps leaders. They'd come back and they'd be like, they're studs. And I talked to him, I was like, hey man, I don't know how this conversation was started. I'd never talked to cops in the life. I was not living the life to be talking to police officers, I'll put it that way. And so I have a conversation with them out of nowhere. I don't know if it was like God's plan or whatever. And I'm like, how do you like the job? Right. And so back then it was kind of like there's like a little more distrust with like minorities and police officers. So it happened to be a black police officer. So I just like decided to talk to him. He's like, yeah, man, like it's phenomenal. This is a really good career, etc. He's like, you should apply. He's like, you're bilingual. You were in the Marine Corps. I mean, I was going to like community college at the time, just going through the basic the I was going through the motions, right? I'd literally get off work. I'd work from 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then I go straight to community college. I'd literally have like broccoli on my clothes, and I'd be showing up to class, and professors were like, "Yo, are you homeless? Like, what the hell's going on?" I'm like, "No, I'm just kidding, right?" So I'd literally be smelling like broccoli in class. It was pretty embarrassing. So while everyone else was partying, I'm like, I'm a produce guy, right? So with the jar of pico de gallo, in case you guys think I'm kidding, I'm not kidding. I had a jar of pico de gallo with me at all times because Jose would hook it up every morning. So I decided to start applying to some law enforcement positions, right? And if in case you guys don't know, California pays the highest for cops. It's craziness. It's absolute craziness when you really think about it. And I look back, I'm like, oh my goodness. But California's cost of living is pretty high, and cops usually make six figures. They make nurses' salaries. So it's this unknown fact. So in case you guys are ever thinking about it, you want to have a conversation, be about law enforcement on the side, let me know. But you'll make 100, 150, $200,000 a year in California. So I ended up applying, and things are great, right? But I got turned down by like 14 police agencies. They're like, nah, you're not ready. You got this. I don't know. You're too young, no experience. And I'm just like, F it. F it. Because this is another like kick in the shin, guys. I'm just like, there's no hope for me. So I applied to Oakland Police Department in California, guys. And in case you didn't know, Oakland, California is an interesting place to say the least. All right. It is like the robbery capital of the nation, like armed robberies. You're more likely to get robbed there than you are to like get bitten by a bear in the forest. It's craziness. It's absolute crazy. So it's a very violent city. I mean, the Marine Corps is like nothing. So I ended up getting hired, right? It was the best opportunity. So I'm going through the police academy. Things are good. You see me over here. Look at that smile. All right. I'm looking all motivated. I'm drinking my coffee. And so I get hired. I'm going through the academy and I'm still in this toxic relationship. And I'm about to post on this on IG just because I was thinking about this today. So I'm in this toxic relationship, arguments every day, all that good stuff, right? The police department doesn't know. I don't really have the best living situation, etc. I end up about to get dropped from the academy because I make a stupid mistake on a test, like something small. Imagine like spelling your name wrong on a test. And this is 24 weeks out of 26. Like I'm at the finish line. And it's just like this gut punch. I'm like, things can't get worse. Are you kidding me right now? This is my only opportunity. I don't have a college degree. They're going to pay me six figures. This was the way out, and I'm literally about to get fired. So I have a conversation with the training commander. And he looks at me, he's like, get him. And the cops back then, we'd curse a lot more. He's like, what the fuck? What do you mean? He's like, how did you mess up on this? And it was something stupid, guys. It was literally defensive tactics. I was in shape and I like messed up a move. It was so dumb, right? To this day, they don't fail people for this anymore, but it was one of those things. And he's like, "You're one of our like you're a top shot. You're this, you worked your ass off, and we're gonna fire you because of this." So he talks to the police chief. Police chief's like, "Let's give him a second chance." I have to go through the police academy again, start from scratch. Imagine like nursing school, law school. Imagine like you're about to get your bachelor's and they're like, you got to start all over. This is the lesson when it comes down to ego, guys. Sometimes you have to drop your ego, which is one of the best lessons I've learned. I'm going to talk about it in a second. So, anyways, go through the police department again, the academy. It's embarrassing. I'm watching some of my closest friends hit the streets. They're like, get them, it's great, and this and that. And I'm like, some people that I knew were not as good as me. And I'm like, here I am again recycling. It was freaking embarrassing. But I'm like, this is all I got. I'm going to do what I got to do. And it ended up being one of the best moves that ever happened for me because it caused me to humble myself because I was getting that cockiness. You know, when you get a little bit of success and then all of a sudden your chin starts to go a little higher, maybe you start drinking your tea with your pinky out and you're like, yeah, my shit doesn't stink, as we like to say. So I ended up graduating and it's like this fresh start in life, guys. And the reason I bring this up is because ultimately it's not for you to feel bad, but you have to understand that you're not special. Everybody's going to go through something similar to what you're going through. It might be a family member that dies. It might be bankruptcy. It might mean like I'm in $500,000 in debt. I don't know what to do. But everybody has something similar that happens. So you fast forward, right? I work my ass off. Literally, I'm working 100 hours a week, guys. Like, no joke. Every single day, I'm working 16 hours. And you're probably wondering, like, how do you get sleep? I literally moved to the hood. I moved to the hood, guys, where people were getting shot. I was like, it doesn't matter. I paid $1,000 a month for rent. My cell phone bill was like $37. I refused to get unlimited internet. I was like, I got Wi-Fi at work anyway, right? I was trying to save every dollar. And my work was like 3 minutes away. So I'd work 16 hours. I'd literally get up, go there, work out, etc. Saved every single penny. And one of the best days of my life was literally the moment that I had $0 in my bank account and $0 in debt, which is craziness. You're probably like, $0. Literally, my bank, everything showed zero because I paid off my personal loans. It was like 7 different credit cards I kept rotating through, all that good stuff. And so I bring this up because I want to share with you guys like the stages of wealth and the stages of building up wealth from the perspective of somebody that was a blue collar worker. Parents are immigrants. They didn't know anything. The whole idea was like save, 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 get married. Hopefully you'll be happy one day. That's the best advice they had. So from the perspective of running 2 8-figure companies, investing a lot, owning real estate, all this good stuff, I want to break this down for you guys. All right. So from 0 to $10,000, right? So this is the same principle that applies if you're making this a month and it's just the first $10,000 in your business or investments. All right, guys, this is literally the same. From 0 to 10,000, you're just figuring it out. That's it. You are just figuring it out. You do whatever you got to do. Slanging on the streets, like you got some lemonade stands, it doesn't matter. You just need to create that additional income. Once you make that first dollar, you're like, okay, somebody's willing to pay me for this skill. And at that point, that's when you just start figuring out how does it make sense for them? How much do they want to pay me, etc. You're just figuring it out. And it's probably one of the most stressful times you're going to have. And if some of you guys, or I know some of you guys have like credit card processing businesses, ATM businesses, this is when you start getting kicked in the shin. You start talking to merchants and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my mind with these people. But everyone goes through it in business. Everybody. So you're just figuring it out at this point. I actually give you guys a screenshot over here because this happens all the time. So if you zoom in a little bit, what you're going to see is to this day, I still get it. Importing stuff and it's like, hey, we locked up your stuff at customs. You're like, oh my goodness, can I catch a break? Delays in production, fulfillment companies dropping the ball, people screwing you over. I've had business partners steal hundreds of thousands of dollars, multiple different businesses, lots of failure, a lot of setbacks, but you just figure it out, guys. All right. So that's going to be 0 to $10,000. Your first $10,000, roughly, this is what you're going to go through. So from $10,000 to $100,000, right? This is where repetition comes in, right? Because once you make that first 10,000 and it hits your bank account, whether it's residuals, whether it's, selling something online, an e-commerce business, flipping a real estate deal, you're just like, whoa, I could do this. But then you're like, you have this new reset. It's like the new month hits, and you're like, well, wait a second, I got to do it over again. And then you have this immense rush of stress. Like literally, like I'm telling you, like somebody pours a bucket over you again, and you're like, oh no, I got to redo this again. And this is the same thing if you're making $10,000 a month or in a year, guys. So what you're doing is it's multiple versions of repetition. That's it. You're literally just repeating the same thing over and over. And it feels like it's just not giving up. Like it feels like that's the skill set you have to master at this point, is literally just not giving up. And the reason I say that is because this is from multiple businesses, guys. I'm talking about real estate. I'm talking about digital marketing, physical, like real storefronts, helping my buddy scale a roofing business. Like it's the same grit across all these different sectors. You're just repeating the same thing you did from 0 to 10, simpler, faster, and easier. And here's the thing, guys. I'm going to give you some advice, right? It doesn't get easier. At this point, it doesn't get easier. This is where the late nights come in. This is where the weekends come in. And this is actually when you have that first mindset shift of like, wait a second, weekends are just a fugazi. They're fake. They don't mean anything. And some of you guys, if you work jobs that aren't in corporate America, you've already realized that already. When you clock into work on Saturday or you work nights, you're like, oh, this stuff doesn't mean anything. We've been bred to be factory workers, guys. Literally, the 9 to 5 was built so we could have the best factories in the US. So 10 to $100,000 is literally just repetition, guys. Right? Now, $100,000 to $500,000. This is the sweet spot. I'm not gonna lie. This is like when things get really exciting. You get motivated. People see the invigoration in you, and they're like, "Damn, somebody changed. Luis changed. Hamza changed. Sandra's looking good." Like that's literally what people start talking about, and they're like, "Man, what happened? What'd you do?" And they just don't see what happened from 10 to 100,000. Those late nights, you know that feeling when it feels like you have like one of those Q-tips or cotton balls in the back of your eyes because you're so tired, and you're like, I don't know if I can drive. I'm feeling like a little dangerous today. And maybe sometimes you wake up in bed and you're like, how did I get home from work? They don't see that, and it is what it is. Equal opportunity, unequal results. It is what it is. If any of you guys have had bad tenants, if any of you guys have had stores that have failed, if any of you guys have had merchants that have burned you, it is what it is. The other people, when you're successful, they don't see those things. They're just bullet points in your journal. So 100 to 500,000. And this is from experience, guys, from 100 to 5,000 a month and in a year. It's the same thing. It comes down to building systems and reinvesting capital. Because what ends up happening here is you think that you made it, but you haven't. I'm telling you right now, you haven't made it. Because you're one change, one industry change, one ad decision change, one fulfillment change from failure. This is the most dangerous point to be in business. And you would think that it's actually things are okay, but it's not. This is where you have to be very aggressive. You have to build a system. I'm so big on this. And if you guys have known me, I've known a few people here for a few years. I'm huge on systems. Forget delegation. I'll do it myself. I'll figure it out. But I'm going to build a system for it to be followed. And that way we can track it and we can make it better. So from $100,000 to $500,000 a month in any business, guys, it comes down to systems, building out the systems, and reinvesting capital. And what this means is, as much as you think you've made it, you've made some money, what ends up happening is you realize, I got to reinvest all of this. And this is the same thing if your business is doing $100,000 a year, guys, which is about $8,300 a month. It's the same thing. You got to reinvest to get it a little bigger, because otherwise you're not going to be competitive. And like I said, anything can change at any moment. All of a sudden, we talk about President Trump doing tariffs. We look at trade deals. We look at crypto becoming the norm. And all of a sudden, you're priced out of the industry and you become the next blockbuster, as we know it has been. So this is where you have to be very aggressive and actually build out these systems and reinvest the money to grow your business faster, right? So this is $100,000 to $500,000 in a year, also a month. The same principles apply, guys, right? Now, 500,000 to $1 million, right? Things are getting good. How many guys are like, man, I'm gonna get to 500K, life is good, right? Some of you guys are like, man, I'll be chilling at the beach. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And I'm telling you this, it's Saturday. We're here. I got my fitness drink. I got my water, and that's all I focus on, and a computer screen. And some of you guys send messages to me at 2 a.m. and you're like, get them. Why are you responding? It is what it is, guys. What ends up happening at this point is you get like this excitement because things good. Like you're driving down the street and you're like, get out the way. And we're like, get out the way. Crosswalks, you're just walking straight. You're wishing somebody walked in front of you. You're gonna push them over. You're like Stone Cold Steve Austin. You guys ever watch WWE, WWF? You're over here like, man, you're over here like on the edge of the at the edge of the ring. You got the big metal chair, and you're like, tag me in. I'm gonna smack down. Or if some of you guys, have immigrant moms when they're throwing that sandal at you, chancla. Hey, this is the point you're at. You're like, nobody can touch me. So when you're making 500,000 to $1 million, whether it's a year or a month, your biggest thing that will destroy your business is new things. So if any of you guys have listened to Alex Hormozi, he has a pretty good podcast. I would listen to his stuff like 3 years ago, not like the current stuff. The 3 years ago stuff is very good stuff for you. Or Layla Hormozi, she talks about this a lot actually. But the biggest thing is avoiding new things. Because what happens is this: the people at this number and the people at this number and the people at this number when you're homeless, they actually start coming out now. And they're like, yo, check this out. They're like, Jorge, Jihan, Casey, I got this new thing for you. And the biggest thing you have to do is just avoid them. So when I say avoiding new things, sometimes it's people, sometimes it's the friends, sometimes it's the family members, sometimes it's the friends or the family that you thought were family, but they're not anymore because they think that you've made it. They think you're rich, and all of a sudden they come out. It's kind of like, they say when you win the lotto, don't tell anybody. It's kind of sad, but unfortunately, it doesn't matter what culture you're in. It's the same thing. So you have to avoid the new people. You also have to avoid the new shiny object. There's always going to be something new. It's like, hey, what if we just add this? What if we just do this? Hey, I think we should add this. Here's the problem with that, though. By you doing that, you detract yourself from the thing that made sense. And I'm going to give you a quick story. A close friend of mine from the military, I keep mentioning, he has a roofing business. They do very well. He grew up in the hood, all odds against him. We met each other in the Marines. I don't know how this happened. And here we are today. So the reason I say this is because at the end of the day, I had a conversation with him years ago. He had a roofing business that he was scaling. And then from there, what ended up happening was he was actually trying to start doing day trading. And I was like, hey, man, you have these employees, you have these things going on. Why are you going to do day trading? He's like, well, I just want to make a little extra money, et cetera. I was like, well, what about your employees? You got like 14 guys that they only speak Spanish. They need you. And if you lose the money, there goes your business and there goes their families. What ends up happening at this point is you get to the actual point where you're like, okay, I'm going to start this new thing because it sounds great because I've been successful in this one thing. So what ends up happening in your head is you think that because you're successful in one thing, you're going to be successful in the next, which is where most people fail. So you need to avoid new things, adding on new products that are unnecessary, jumping into other industries that are unrelated. All you do is focus on avoiding new things, which sounds crazy, but that alone is a full-time job, and scaling people. I would recommend, there's this book you guys can check out. It's actually called Scaling People. It's from the CEO of Stripe. She's a badass. She scaled Stripe from being something nobody knew about to now everybody what they complain about. That's why Stripe handles Amazon's payments, Google's payments, like all the big tech companies. Stripe handles it. They weren't like that before, but all she focused on was scaling people, reinvesting into the people around you. That's why if you've worked with me or you work with me, I'm really big. And sometimes I'm an asshole. It is what it is. But I'm really big on pushing people to be the best, because ultimately, if you are at this point the best person in your business, you have already failed because you'll never grow bigger. If you're the smartest, if you're the hardest working, and the hardest working is always gonna be debatable, but if you're at that point where the business needs you to run 24/7, something is wrong. Either you didn't build a system or you didn't delegate the right things to people. You didn't develop them, you didn't communicate with them, or you didn't train them. So I know what some of you guys might be thinking. You're like, well, 500,000 to $1 million, I'm not even like close to that. But here's the thing. If you set yourself up mentality-wise where you're thinking, okay, I know I'm going to hit that because these are the conversations I had with myself. I was listening to Hermosi in my patrol car when he wasn't big. Literally, this guy's in a tank top on a whiteboard. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I have no idea what business I'm going to apply it to, but I'm never going to forget this. So I challenge you to actually pay attention, bookmark this, because when you start scaling your business, these are the things you're actually going to run into. I guarantee it. You're going to send me a message, just like a lot of my friends that I've helped them build their businesses. They're like, dang, get them. You're right. I'm like, I told you, I didn't lose these hairs for no reason. I'm kidding, guys. All right. So with that, scaling people, that means investing into them. That means finding the right people. That means the person that was good at level one sometimes is not the good at level two. It is what it is. It's business. You ever heard that statement? And if you guys want a good documentary to watch, I've told some of you guys this, especially if you're in business already, but there's the Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix. It's about WWE, the founder. It's a really good documentary because he built a multi-billion-dollar company and he went through the ringer. Federal government trying to put him in prison, employees stealing from him, starting their own companies. You see it in his eyes. He's just like, yeah, shit sucked. So this is where you focus on actually building people around you, because the other side of this is this. How many of you guys want to like generate money and be by yourself? The beach is only enjoyable for so long by yourself. It comes down to building the right tribe, building the right community, and then from there, you're able to see other people grow around you. And the saying I always say is like, hey, you can have a big piece of a small pie, or you can have a smaller piece of a very big pie. And this is where building people around you comes in, right? So the next point, right, is going to be $1 million plus. And that's per month. This is the exact same principle. And this is also per year. So meaning you're actually making $83,333.33 a month. So I know right now a lot of people are like, man, I don't know if I'll ever hit that, et cetera, but it's actually very achievable, especially in the digital age right now, especially if you're investing profits in digital assets. Literally, if any of you guys started with me 2 months ago, all your investments should be up. Like it's craziness in the market. And it's going to go up. If you know news, what's going on, it's going to go up. So this is very much closer than you think it is. And $1 million, just to tell you guys, is not that much. Because what ends up happening, the moment you get seven figures, like two commas in your bank account, you're just like, that's it. Like you're expecting, like if any of you guys have seen The Price is Right, the show, or like Jeopardy from back in the day, the original one, where it's like daily double and everyone's like cheering for you and all that, it doesn't happen. You hit the number and it's like you're at the coffee shop and they're like, "Are you gonna order?" And you're like, "But don't you know who I am? I'm at seven figures." And they're like, "So are you gonna pay the 20% service fee?" One of those things, right? So when you get to this number, what ends up happening is delegation, because you can't keep up with everything. In case you guys know, hired a executive assistant because at a certain point you're just like, all right, you can be really efficient at a few things or you can be really bad at a lot of things. So at this point is when you have to kind of like, you know what, right before this, you're scaling people, obviously, and you should have had systems in place. So you guys notice these are building blocks I'm showing you. So if you built those systems, brought in the right people, they're making those systems better and you're investing into them. So now they have ownership, they have control, they feel like they have a voice in your company, because they do. And if you don't, you're an idiot. I'm just going to tell you right now. So at $1 million, it really comes down to delegation. It comes down to communication, coordination, delegation, and training. And the last factor, motivation. Because if people aren't motivated around you, it ain't gonna work. It is what it is. You can pay them as much money as you want, they ain't gonna work. Because it's like in the back of the head. You guys ever had that manager, that coworker? They're like, man, fuck that dude. If you guys got family around, make sure you put on earmuffs, all right? That's why I don't do these coaching calls on Sundays, all right? So you know what I'm talking about. Whether you're in the military, sometimes in like medical fields, corporate America, even like remote positions where you get that little the CC your manager email, you're like, really, like that petty stuff, the stuff you're trying to get away from, where you're like, fuck that dude. What ends up happening is if you don't delegate and motivate and build the people around you, you become that person. And I have been that person in the past. I was in charge of police officers, and I had to be sometimes. I had to be the person that's like, hey man, I'm not here for you to like me, but when you go back home to your family and you're alive, which this has happened, friends of mine have been shot. Then they look back and they're like, damn, dude, I really appreciate what you said. I'm like, it is what it is. Like the fact that you're going back to your family is what it is. And while that's the extreme end, In business, it's something similar. If you build up people around you, you delegate, you motivate them because you actually believe in the mission, that's when you actually start scaling. And I bring up those references of like Netflix documentaries, that book Scaling People, which is really, it's about tech, but it's still really good principles for leadership because at this point, it really comes down to leadership. And I'm going to give you guys an example. So I'm sure all of you guys know who Elon Musk is. Right now, he's been involved in politics because you know what ends up happening at a certain point? You make enough money that you're like, well, money doesn't affect me anymore. Now you go after power and influence. And that's usually what happens. That's why people go for presidencies, political positions, because like, the stuff doesn't excite you anymore. That's what actually ends up happening here. So you want to build out and delegate to people. And the reason why is because you won't scale past where you're at by yourself. And the analogy I give you is like this. When you're building out your team, think of like a glass of lemonade, right? This is Citrus Melody, and I'm not sponsored by Fit Aid, guys, all right? So just FYI. So you pour this into like 6 different glasses, all right? You're pouring, and you got like 1 ounce or 200 milliliters as you're overseas. So, and then all of a sudden you start adding a little water, right? Or if you guys ever had Kool-Aid back in the day, anybody remembers that? You start putting a little Kool-Aid powder, a little water. And then you pour it into more glasses and more glasses. Think of that as delegation. At a certain point, you ask yourself, is it even lemonade anymore? Because it's so watered down, it's so inefficient. That's where that bloat happens, and that's where companies disappear. And all of a sudden, you step away from the company, and this has happened to friends of mine, close friends of mine. They just lost everything. They're like, dude, I don't know what happened. I'm like, well, I can tell you what happened, but just let me know when you need help. And you're like, what happened? Why did revenue go down? Why did money start getting burned? Why did money disappear? I had a close friend of mine invested into the wrong people, didn't build systems, didn't delegate, and all of a sudden this massive business I was building crumbled to the point it's like, hey man, I need to borrow money. It's like, what happened? It's like, I don't know. We got all this equipment, this money disappeared. I don't know. People left because you didn't invest into the right people and you didn't motivate them. So I give you that analogy of like watered down lemonade because what ends up happening at this point is you start delegating maybe to the wrong people and you don't have an accountability. And then they become this toxic thing in your organization. And this has happened to me. We had to fire an executive in the past because he stole money from us and he was just toxic. People were quitting. And we're like, what happened? Like, well, it's just a lot of pressure. I'm like, from who? Not me. It's like, oh, we figured out what it was. They become this toxic thing in your organization. Think of it as a fruit basket with a rotten strawberry, and everything starts molding slowly and slowly. You step away for a few days, you come back, and you're like, what's that smell? And things are going downhill very quickly. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself back at $100,000 a month, then $50,000 a month, maybe even zero, and you have to figure it all out again. So if you want to prevent that, this is where, number one, delegation to the right people, motivation. And then this is also the point where we start looking at multiple verticals, right? This is the part where you start looking at complementary products. So remember when I said that you want to avoid new things? This is the part where you make new things that are complementary. So I'm going to give you guys some analogies, right? So say you have a cleaning business, right? Which really a cleaning business, all it is just finding the right workers and combining that with marketing, and that's all it is. So you got the clean business. You're like, well, wait a second. Why don't we start actually selling like recurring subscriptions? Why don't we wash their cars while we're there? Why don't we decide to actually do some type of part-time chef work or nanny work, et cetera? They're complementary businesses where your employees or the systems you built can work together. Or maybe you sell books, for example, and you're like, well, why don't we do some audio books? Why don't we do some podcast appearances, et cetera? These are just complementary things that happen, guys. So I know this is probably a little farther away for almost everybody in the room, except for one of you guys. But when you get to this point where it is $1 million a month or $1 million a year, because it's the same principle, these are the things you got to focus on. So the number one question I get, guys, the number one question I get is, get them, does it get easier? Does it get easier? So the sad part is it doesn't. However, you just get used to it. And it might seem weird, but I'll ask you this. Would you rather be accountable to somebody where you have to clock in, you have like a time card, if you guys remember still punching in time cards, I know it's old school, where you have a time clock and you have this boss and these people that you don't want to be around, and you have strict hours that you work and days off, like quote unquote days off? Or would you rather have no days off, but the only difference is that you're accountable to yourself and you're building something. You're creating money out of thin air. Some of you guys, I say actually everybody in here has been in both positions. And I can tell you, hands down, if you ask any entrepreneur, aside from the stress, apart from the strained relationships, etc., it's like it doesn't get easier, but it does get better. It gets simpler, you start understanding it. And what ends up happening is entrepreneurship turns into this like self-development. As crazy as it sounds, you start reading philosophy. Some of you guys get closer to God. You start reading the Bible, the Quran, whatever it is. You start getting closer because like you realize, oh, the reason why I'm successful is a direct result of myself. The reason that I'm a failure, quote unquote, and that's not a bad thing, guys, to be a failure. That means you actually attempted, is because of myself. So you start realizing to get to all these points I just mentioned, the $1 million, the $500,000, the $100,000, maybe even just starting for the first $10,000 is all a matter of yourself. And you realize it was all just a game anyway. So what you'll notice at this point, especially, I'm not going to go into like $10 million plus because it's a little different at that point. But you notice that people, when they start generating way more revenue, they become usually I guess, a more eccentric version of themselves. Sometimes they become a little more philosophical. They start talking about theory more. And they say, money's not the best thing. And you're like, speak for yourself. I'm trying to get paid, right? Let's keep it real. But it's when you get to that point, you realize it's all just a game and you could start all over and you have the utmost confidence in yourself. So that feeling you may have right now where, bills are piling up, stress is happening. You got Mother's Day coming up. Oh, I got this. I got maybe a bad relationship, etc. It gets better because you build upon yourself. You get more confidence in yourself. And then you realize you can conquer anything. You can start a restaurant and I can figure it out. You start a cleaning business, I can figure it out. You can start a car wash. You can start a health staffing business. It doesn't matter. You realize I can figure it out. But you have to take that first step forward, get past those limiting beliefs because you're not going to believe in yourself at first. You're going to have imposter syndrome. You're going to be at a point where you're like, man, I don't know if I can do this. It feels like everybody's staring at me. But like I mentioned in the beginning of this, guys, you're not that special. And then you start realizing why that statement really comes true, guys. Right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I wanted to do something a little different for today just because, I see I talk to a lot of you guys one-on-one. Sometimes we have phone calls, coaching calls, etc. But ultimately, like this is like the path that I had to take. This is how we've gotten to the point we're at right now. This is how you guys will do better. And this is why I'm so confident, say 2025 is that year for everybody in here, each and every single one of you. And that's why I can send you messages. I can send you voice messages and I'm excited because I'm excited. Sometimes I'm going to be frank. I tell my team this. Sometimes I'm more excited for you than you are of yourself. And then maybe that's the kickstart. That's that Tinder that you need to be like, maybe I am capable because you are. I've been through it all, guys. I've been through it all. So I believe in every single one of you guys. I do know you can be the best version of yourself, whether it's this business, whether it's just investing into digital assets, which really is part-time, guys. You need to find that real focus because this is just the vehicle to accelerate. This is gasoline on top of a fire, but you still need that fire. So if you need help with those foundational steps, if you need help with like a sales funnel, marketing, employment, just some advice to like what direction you want to go, where I will be objective. I'm not going to tell you what I think is not going to be best for you. I'm just going to give you objective information and it's going to be like, what do you think? Send me a message. Send me a text message. Most of you guys have my phone number. If you don't, send me a message in Slack. I'll give you my number. Because you can be successful. And what ends up happening is it comes full circle. A year from now, 10 years from now, or even maybe an hour from now, I'm like, wait a second. Luis, do you know that one person? Or Carrie, do you know that one person? And it all comes full circle. That's why I can invest so much. All right, guys. So enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Mother's Day. Please reach out to your mothers. Everyone in here has a mother, right? Hopefully you're still in contact with her because she's going to be mad. Tell her I said Get 'em says hi. And enjoy the weekend, guys. And thanks for attending.